and was in the Boy Scouts before World War II, and the first camp I went to was run by the Knights of Columbus back in 1941, prior to World War II, and then that was out in West Holly, Mass, and the next camp was Sacred Heart Camp in Sharon. I guess we went for 2 weeks, and then the next one was up at Camp Waskechi in Georgetown, and went for several weekend camps up in Harold Parker in Andover. And during the war years, we pretty much ran ourselves because most of the scoutmasters were in the service, and they were actually showing us how to put out what do you call them, what are the bombs that make fires, incendiary, what do they call, incendiary bombs? I think it's, when I think of it, we're down on the floor in Knights of Columbus, they were showing us how to put out incendiary bombs, I think. Imagine 13-year-old kids, it was showing us how to, with sand, Yeah. You couldn't believe what was going on during World War II. And incendiary bombs, yeah, sure.
There are other things happening during that?
What's that?
Do you have other specific things that were happening around that?
They actually, German subs were not that far off the coast, at that point, at that period of time. I mean, they were sinking ships not far off the coast,
Do you have any other stories about Grammy? I know you said you had a lot more. Do you have one that you could talk about? Or about, I know you were talking to me the other day about, it was about Uncle Paul when he was little, you were building something. You were talking to Anna, I guess, not me, and I walked in at the end of it, building like a piece of furniture or something, and Uncle Paul was asleep, and then he woke up. I don't know. Does that
Well, I remember Paul was when Mary was born. She was born on, of course, the 23rd of December, and so, which was close to Christmas, and so, believe it or not, I was still going to school. I was still, on my degree program, and I was doing term papers, believe it or not. And at one point, just prior to that, your grandmother was helping me doing some research on term papers, and when she decided she had better get to the hospital, and so it was the night of the 23rd she delivered, and so I'm down there at the hospital on the 24th, and I went to midnight, I think I went to midnight mass, and I come home. I'm trying to put toys together for Christmas Day for the children. And it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, and the Christmas tree is up in the, between your bedroom and this room upstairs here. And John and Paula got bunk beds up here in this room above. And Paul looks out from the top bunk, and he says, "Hey, Pa, you need some help?" And at this point in time, I'm trying to think how old Paul is, well, Mary's just born, so Paul is, 9 years old or so, I guess. And I said, "You, Paul, I sure do, you know." So Paul is helping me put toys together at 3 in the morning. Paul was very mature, always was, you know. So anyways, we're putting toys together for everybody at 3 in the morning on Christmas Day. It was, you know, it was a hectic period, you know. So anyway, so that's one story anyway, so. So
And that was
your grandmother's in a hospital, of course, so and of course when your father was born, he was, we couldn't bring him home from the hospital because he was jaundiced, you know. And anyways, and I didn't understand it quite, and I was quite concerned, see. So anyways, I said to the nurse, I said, "Well, should this boy be baptized, you know?" So anyways, she said to me, "Is this your first?" You know, I says, "No, it's my fourth, you know." She says, "Well, this isn't serious, you know." So, you know, she says, "It's just gotta be," because they had him in a room all by himself with oxygen, you know. But I didn't quite understand it, so he was only there like 3 days by himself, but I felt so bad with a little infant in a room all by himself. Oh, so then when we brought him home, I'll never forget that scene. It was the 3 boys are in the back seat, and of course in this time there's no seat belts or anything. See, so your mother's in the seat, your grandmother's in the seat aside of me, and I'm right. And the nurse hands them to your mother in the front seat. And the nurse says to the 3 boys in the back seat, she says, "Well, there's your new brother." So anyway, so we had to force him at that point. So then when Mary, we were just so sure when Mary was born it'd be another boy, but thank God it was a girl, so, because we needed a nurse badly.
Let's see. How about and you had some story about what are they called? A pressure cooker that somebody was cooking in?
Oh, that was Mimir. That was well, I was a devotee of pressure cooking, and I never had any trouble with it, you know, because I always watched it very carefully and stuck to the cooking time on it, and I always watched the, you know, shut it down when it reached its maximum time. But anyways, your other grandmother, or other great grandmother, Mimir, was very quick in the kitchen, and she had a pressure cooker down in Ocean Avenue, and she could set the record for putting the meal together. I mean, she was very quick. And anyways, this day she was using a pressure cooker, and she didn't apparently look at the pressure cooker, there's a seal on a pressure cooker, a safety seal. And she apparently wasn't paying attention to the you've got to watch a pressure cooker on the you know, when it, you know, to shut the heat down when it reaches that maximum rocking on it. And otherwise she's going to blow on you. And it blew. And she had, I think, string beans in it. Well, there was string beans all over the ceiling, everywhere, in 2 rooms. Because the hole is about the size of the tip of your finger, but it just shoots out like a gusher. And I mean, they had to have to wash the ceilings and have it all painted again. You know, it was that bad. You know, so she never used the pressure cooker again. So anyway. But I continue to use the pressure cooker myself, so.
Learned that lesson the hard way.
What's that?
I said she learned that lesson the hard way.
Yeah, no. But anyways, but she fascinated me. She was a great peace, what they called, peace worker. I mean, peace working, do you understand what peace working is? Peace working was, you got paid by the number of pieces that you worked on, and she would, it was a way, you know, in factories, you know, and you get paid by the piece, in other words, or you by the dozen, and that's the way she would work. And but she actually, for years, even into her older years, worked as a presser, which is a man's work, you know. And, you know, she was, you really never knew her, but she was a very frail woman. No, she was rangy. She was very thin, and but she was a rangy person. But she was good. She, as I say, it was a man's work, but she was a presser in a dry cleaning place. God, but she did that thing for years and years. But till she had a stroke, she was out in California visiting her daughter who had a stroke, and she'd go out there to help her, and she was out there for, she'd go out periodically to help her, and it was just before Thanksgiving, and or at Thanksgiving, and she had a stroke, and she, I think it was her whole left side, and she could talk, though it didn't, thank God, she could talk, and it didn't hurt her thought process or talking process, but she couldn't do anything, and she had to be assisted on everything. So she was out there. Your grandmother went out the day after Thanksgiving and stayed out there till the end of January. I was alone here for 2 months, and then they brought her back in February. She was here for we took care of her here for February into February, March, April, May, June. But it became an impossible task. It was 24 hours a day, you know what I mean? Because we had some help during the day, but you're up all night, you know. Every time she had to go to the bathroom, it was, you know, it was a huge deal. So she herself came to it. She says, you know, this can't continue. So we got her into a very nice place over in Beverly. But so she lasted a long time. She was, I think, the better part of 10 years there. But she was quite a girl, really. She was a great, you know, she was more like a mother than a mother-in-law, you know. It was like, she was, I was very fortunate. I mean, my father gave me the greatest advice. He said, when you're, he said, when you're serious about any girl, he says, get to know her mother. And I did. I went with Jean for about 2 years and 3 months prior to getting married. But I spent a lot of time with her family, and I got to know her father well and her mother well, and I got to know her brother and sister well, and her 2 brothers, and became very friendly with them. And her father and mother and my father and mother got to be great friends, which was unusual really in a lot of cases. So that it was really good. So I had, in fact, one night over there, Mrs. Mackrell, I would bring, after 4 o'clock Mass, I always brought communion over to her. We'd go over after Jean and I go over, and I'd bring communion to her. In fact, she was the type of a person that would, she'd have me bring over about 12 or 13 hosts who she'd want me to bring communion to, about 10, 12 people over there, So we'd have a little prayer service for about 12 or 13 people every Saturday night over there. And so one night, and then when they put her to bed, it's Saturday night, there was a tape that, with Bishop Jellineau from Providence, who was the Bishop of Providence, in French. And it had to be Bishop Jellineau, and these were tapes that, and the people, the attendants would screw them up, and it had to be in French, and it had to be, he was French, and it had to be in French. And we had a hell of a time, it wasn't the discs, and it'd screw them up, because some of these people are not the swiftest people in the world that work nights particularly. So anyways, at one time we had the damnedest time getting them, So anyways, but then after the tape was over, they would play Gentle Woman, And she said to me, John, she said, every time they play that, she said, I think of Anna, she said, because she was, which to me was, I thought was so very sweet, because she thought that much of my mother. But anyways, it was that way, I was very fortunate, in my marriage, that I not only had great parents, but I had great in-laws, you know what I mean? And I had, 2 brother-in-laws that I was close to, and a sister-in-law I was very close to, and so, it was an unusual situation, I always thought, So, Claire had a tough life. Tough in the sense she was out she was only 5 or 6 years married out in Rochester, New York, when she had this, became diabetic. She became a brittle diabetic, And then she was out they moved out to California. The company he was with went out to California. And he was a workaholic, her husband, and he did very well, but he was traveling all the time, and then she had this stroke, and that was tough, she was, and she not only had the diabetes, but, that she was, and then, he would have to wake her up in the middle of the night just to check her sugar level, and she was that, and then, and although he was very successful, I always, they didn't get much out of it. He was working all the time, and, I think, Gene and I went out there in 1975, and they had a place that was like a place in the movies, you know what I mean? It was beautiful and all. But anyway, I said to her as we were leaving, we stayed for 10 days or so. And it was the first time we were in California, but it was really beautiful, the whole area. We rented a car and went around a lot. But as we were leaving, I said, gee, Claire, this is really beautiful. She said, John, you want it, you can have it, you know? And I think, she said, they envied Gene and I, you know what I mean? I mean, she did anyways, you know? But, you know, and I've looked back since your grandmother has passed. I've thought of my life and everything. I wouldn't swap with anybody, really. I mean, we had a great 58 years, I'll tell you. I don't know, this is, you know,
No, this
a
is
crazy
great.
old man, I don't know.
No, this is perfect. This
But,
is great. This is exactly what I